My uncle used to say to me, you're either going to be a successful sales business person or you're going to be a criminal. And I remember at the age of 16 coming to 17, I remember just really thinking, am I even going to survive to see, young manhood?
Am I allowed to ask how much did you sell it for? Sam, I tell you what makes me happy here. You're a successful business person, and from my good understanding, you operate in retirement village space. Mm-hmm. You're also in finance, property development, and I'm assuming many other things. And I know your story wasn't easy. I know you started from absolutely nothing and you built successful business. What's really exciting for me, your son works for me. Mm-hmm. He cannot speak highly of his father. Now, that makes me happy. Where I come from, family is everything. That tells me you have done your job as a father to have you have an amazing son who's actually in this room. So you got an amazing son who's a hardworking. He's very respectful of older people or people around him. And he was telling me, you gotta have my dad on the podcast. He's got an amazing story, and my dad should really write a book. But everything you have done in your life so far, that is nothing in my eyes compares to what yourself as a father have really achieved and done with having son that is, going, in the right path, I guess. So that makes me really, really happy. So welcome, Sam.
Thank you, and appreciate that introduction. I mean, I'm feeling all warm and fuzzy and tingly with goosebumps. No, that's my biggest accomplishment. If you were to ask me what it was the success of my son being a respectful, diligent young man. So, very, very proud of him and very proud to be here. So thank you.
Which is also awesome to me as well, because a lot of people that do extremely well in their life, in business, when they do have kids, mm-hmm. kids don't work, they're spoiled. Your son works. And I know he works because he's working for myself. And really, when you think about it, he doesn't have to, mm-hmm. right? He can really say, you know what, my dad, I can just get money from my dad and I can find every excuse in the world why I can't work, why people are mean to me, so I can just get free money. Mm-hmm. He works. No excuses whatsoever. Which is funny. I don't have kids, right? And I always said that if I had kids, what I would do, I would send them to my friend, for example, yourself. And I would say, Sam, I want you to be so hard mm-hmm. on my son. Mm-hmm. I want you to almost treat him like shit. Reason why? Because I think it's important for kids these days to learn value of hard work, not have it easy, because you can die tomorrow. Bus can hit you tomorrow, plane can crash, who fucking knows, right? Mm-hmm. And I always think, that if I had kids, I would want them to learn really hard value. So your son is working for me now, so I'm going to do exactly that.
Thank you. That sounds like a plan. But you're absolutely right. I find in today's generation, young kids learning the basic skill sets of simple things like respect.
Yes.
Particularly to the elders, which is a very ethnically from our background, it's all about respect.
Yes.
Learning the humble things in life about how to earn a dollar.
Yes.
You don't get the silver spoon or the golden spoon just because of what your parents did.
Yes.
So I wanted him to go on the grind. I wanted him to learn. I wanted him to generate his own success.
Yes.
So he can appreciate everything that life has. And I think he'll appreciate what he's earned in his own right.
Yes.
And at some point, he will take over the family businesses and he'll create his own one, but he'll have the right foundation.
Correct. I mean, look, to be honest, if something did happen to you, if he never worked day in his life, and if he took everything you have created, it'll be gone to waste within a minute, if he doesn't have that work ethic and the skill. So which is interesting. A lot of successful business owners, even when you look at the Murdoch family, even Lachlan Murdoch, he was working for his father in early stages of his life, but then he got pushed away to do his own thing before he came back to the family. But which is really sad because right now their own family is in courts and so on. So money's got kind of great effects and bad if you don't manage family values all the time. And I always say money can be so good, but can be the biggest evil if it can ruin the families if you don't put family values first. It can just do more damage than anything. Tell me your story. Where were you born in Australia, Melbourne?
No. Egypt.
Where were you born?
Egypt, Cairo.
Egypt.
There's
not many Egyptians I have met in Australia. Is there many Egyptians in general?
There are. Yes, there are. But they usually stick to certain segments within Sydney or in Melbourne and so forth. But yeah, there are quite a few.
So how old were you when you came to Australia?
3 years old.
3 years old.
Yeah.
Mum,
so pretty
Dad?
much Aussie. Mother first.
Okay.
Father remained back to settle the business affairs. My father originally was a photographer.
Yes.
So he had to settle the businesses and then make his way across. But we came here essentially like any ethnic person did in Australia and came here with essentially nothing.
Yes.
And moved into what we called housing commissions.
That's where I moved in as well, house commission.
Great. And
which is smaller than my garage today.
as was my apartment. I do remember it. So we really started, I suppose, from the bottom.
Yes.
But it was it was the Australian dream to get here and work hard and build and buy a house and all that sort of normal stuff. So it was, But for us, I was 3 years old, so I was quite young.
Did you have any brothers and sisters?
I did. Yes. Yeah. I had an elder brother. Yes, but unfortunately, he's no longer with us anymore. Yeah. So I lost him at a very tender age he was 23.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a big loss.
So age 3, little baby, mom, dad wasn't here.
Correct.
And new life in Australia, new country, new culture, new traditions, and dad is back in Egypt. How long did it take for dad to come here as well?
Another 3 years.
Another 3 years? Did your mom go to work straight away when she came to Australia?
She did.
What did she do?
For the people that are probably at my age, there was a company called Whole Proof,
Yes.
which used to make socks.
Yes.
So she used to take bags of socks and bring them home in big mesh bags.
Yes.
And used to manually sew the imperfections that used to come off the production line.
Yes.
So she would manually there with a needle fix the imperfections and essentially work the majority of the night after she's obviously dealt with the kids and putting them to bed and putting the dinner and all that sort of stuff. And then she would take them back the next day and get another bag and they would pay her according to how many socks she mended.
Right. So she would basically work during the day, look after the kids, and being a foreign mom, she would cook, clean, everything for the kids. And then after you guys are probably all in bed, she would be still working.
Correct.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so all the work that mom did after the hours, did she get paid extra for doing that work?
That was her essential work. So it wasn't an after hour. Back then there was no overtime after hours, in hours. It's produce what you're going to produce in terms of the outcome for the company, and we'll get paid based on the volume.
What year did you come in?
Oh, so I'm nearly 48 now. So 45 years ago.
45 years ago.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So it's 80.
Your dad, his son is right next to us. Your dad, if you look like your dad age 48, man, you're doing really well. When you walked into my office, I said, man, I don't think he's your dad. You got adopted. You know, he's not old enough to be your father, full stop. So interesting. And then obviously dad came a few years later. And what was dad's first job? Could they speak English when they came to Australia?
No.
Zero.
Very, very, like most, again, immigrants, very, very broken English.
Yes.
I think it was harder for my mother because she had to go into the workforce as such and start working really hard and trying to make her way through with limited English. My father, when he arrived, because he had settled the business affairs, he came here with a little bit of money.
Yes.
And that was very helpful.
Yes.
So we were immediately able to move in the state of, we were in Victoria, we were able to move to a very small house, but it was a house. And
Yes.
that was a huge accomplishment at that time.
Yes.
And with the money that he came with, he was able to set us up in terms of getting a business up and running, which he was, as I mentioned, he was a photographer.
Yes.
So he was very keen to get into the business world very quickly. But what he quickly learned that the money that he came with, once converted the currency, wasn't enough money to actually
Not
set up
much.
a business. So he had to go into this PAYG world.
Yes.
And that was a huge thing for my father because ancestrally, his siblings and his parents were all business owners. None of them had ever worked as a PAYG. So there was a bit of arrogance from my father. I thought,
Yes.
I'm not going to go into the PAYG world, but essentially he was forced to. And his first job was in Ford Motor Company,
Yes.
working literally on the production line, making these cars. That didn't last too long.
Yes. Yes.
I think he was only there for a very short period of time, and he sustained an injury. And he just said, I can't do this labourist. It's not me. I'm more of a business person. And
Yes.
and then he quickly got into running a business.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was, it was an interesting time. But I only recall him working for a very short period of time, and it was
Yes.
confirmed.
So
then he got
you
into
would
the
say
business.
you kind of you were growing up at early stages of your life with entrepreneurial family, or dad was really driven.
Yeah. When essentially, and I suppose we'll get to that point, but when I set up my business eventually, my father used to say to me a few years earlier, Sam, you're going, because I was doing very well in the PAYG world initially, making a lot of money. And I would be quite proud of myself. And I'd tell my dad about it. And he said, son, none of this is important. You need to run your own business. You need to run your own company. And I remember saying to him, Dad, you know what? That's old school thinking. In today's world, you can be a highly paid, very influential in the industry person with PAYG. I remember him, we'll see. 3 years later, sure enough, he was right.
Yes.
I was wrong. And I set up my own business. But that's, somewhere down the track.
Which is one thing that I always say, as kids should never be upset with their parents when their parents tell them, don't start a business or go to school or whatever. And somebody says, why would you say that? Your parents should encourage you to do whatever, you want to do. I said, well, you should never be upset with them. One, because they're parents. Two, parents can only tell you what they know.
Correct.
That's
right.
And they always mean well.
Always. The intent is always to
They want you to be okay. I mean, if I listened to my mom and dad, I wouldn't be sitting in this home. I would be working for somebody else all my life. I would probably make $100,000 a year, and that would be it. But that's all they knew, and they just wanted me to be okay, wanted me to be safe. And so I always say to people, never blame your parents. You should always listen to them, what they say. Doesn't mean you have to do what they're suggesting you to do, but never take it personal and never blame them.
Yeah.
You should listen to everything that everybody says, and then you need to take on board what you think is good for yourself.
Okay. When I was young, going back to when I first came as an immigrant in the flats, I always knew that there was something a little bit more than just your average PAYG world. I was always, when I was quite young, I was always quite a hustler. I was always looking at ways to make money because we didn't have any money.
What was your first, you making $1? How old were you?
Oh, I would have been in grade 2. So
Yes.
how old would that be? Very young.
6, 7.
6, 7 years old. I remember going into class and a friend of mine pulled out a packet of Hubba Bubba. They're
You know
basically
what? Can I
chewing
just say
gums.
something?
Go ahead.
I can describe you this chewing gum for anybody that's watching this. I remember it was like really thick as well, and
Correct.
literally breaks your jaw when you're chewing it as
Correct.
well. And it probably had only about 5, 6 chewing gums, like a little
Correct.
box in little squares.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Do they
Exactly.
make Hubba Bubba anymore?
I don't know. I was just thinking that. Do they actually still?
Yeah,
they still do.
videographer is saying
still make
they do. Champ, can you actually bring us some next week as well? All right. Hubba Bubba.
So I remember my friend pulled out some Hubba Bubbas, and he pulled them out and he started chewing on them, as you say, breaking his jaw. And the smell is quite potent on it. So anyway, and he started chewing on it, and I was turned around and I was so envious, and I said, "Can I have one?" And he said, "No, are you kidding?" Like, it was like gold at the time when you were kids.
I remember.
But I remembered that at that moment, I would have given anything to have had a Hubba Bubba at that moment. It was really important to me. So the next day when I got my 25 cents allowance from my mother, every morning she would put 25 cents for me and 25 cents for my brother, and she would leave for work. And I took my 25 cents and I went to the supermarket, well, it's not a supermarket, the little milk bar.
Yes.
And I bought a packet of Hubba Bubba that were actually 25 cents. And I waited until the class started, and then I popped them open. And the same thing, lo and behold, happened with everyone else. "Oh, Sam, can I have one? Can I have one?" "Yeah, but you have to pay for it because it costs me money." "How much are they?" 20 cents.
For one.
For one. And there was 5 in there. So, but I sold them out because everyone just wanted to be cool. Everyone
when you made a $1 profit, it's like, I'm freaking rich.
I'm making money. And so guess what I did the second day? Bought 2 packets of Hubba Bubba. So I started to realize that this game of sales and making money, it was really exciting, and I loved it. My uncle used to say to me, "You are either going to be a successful sales business person or you're going to be a criminal. It's going to be one of the two."
Yes.
Unfortunately, that it became the first one, not the later. So it worked out well.
But which is interesting. I always say for any young individual to have sales skills complemented by hard work, obviously, they will never be poor, and the only thing is, if people love selling in general, if they're good communicators, always tell them, you got to find the industry that pays a lot, that's going to reward you. But also when you're a young individual, don't just chase the money when it comes to sales. Just go and perfect your skills till you find what exactly you love doing, and sales will be doesn't matter, even now I employ 400 people across all my companies. Sales is every day. Doesn't matter what you're doing. And so, you developing that skill at age 6, 7 years old, and, buying something for 25 cents and selling it for $1 or whatever, was definitely good for you. So what happened then?
So I got the knack and I got the taste, I think it is, for sales. I think the next major milestone was in grade 6. I used to live in an area in Victoria, and I was surrounded by basically lots of bush and cows, and so there were paddocks all behind us. And at the time, for fun, there was no internet, there was no mobile phones, there's none of that stuff. So entertainment was playing with rocks out or with the mud. So I used to go out and collect spiders and snakes and lizards, skinks particularly. And if anyone knows what skinks are, they're basically like a drop-tail lizard. So they were very, very difficult to catch. But more importantly, they were very difficult to catch and keep the tail intact.
Right.
So it was an art form because you had to catch it. But if you grab it from the tail falls off, and then you have to wait another X amount of years for it to grow. So I used to catch these lizards, and I used to bring them to school as show and tell. And I was the envy of all my friends. I had no other skills because I was kind of a wimp at the time. And so I'd take them to school. So I was the coolest kid in the block. And so people started saying to me, "Can you catch me a lizard? I want a lizard. I want to be cool too." And then I made the grave mistake of selling a skink to the toughest kid in the school. His name was Bradley Caulfield, I'll never forget. So I sold him one, and it was a Friday. He took it home. Monday morning, I'm coming into school, and there was a bunch of kids waiting for me at the front gate. And they said, "Oh, you're dead. Bradley's going to bash you." And I said, "Why?" He said, "That lizard that you sold him, it was a dud. The lizard died." And I said, "What do you mean it died?" He said, "It died. He's looking for you. He's saying when Sam comes in, I'm going to bash him." So I started panicking, and I'm thinking, what could have possibly gone wrong? Anyway, I come into the school grounds. I'm walking across the basketball court. I'll never forget. And up comes Bradley Caulfield with this whole bunch of kids around him thinking, okay, there's going to be a fight. And back then it was like, fight. And he came over to me and I said, "Oh, Bradley, what's wrong?" Because "You sold me a dud lizard." I said, "What do you mean a dud lizard? It was alive when I gave it to you. What happened?" He goes, "It died." And I said, "Why did it die?" He goes, "I don't know. You sold me a dud lizard." And I said, "Did you put it in a container?" He said, "Yes, I did." "Did you put holes in the top of the container so it can breathe?" He said, "Yes, I did." Did you give it food and water? What do you mean? Well, you got to feed it. You got to feed the lizard. How is it? He said, what am I supposed to feed it? And I said, they eat these little flies that are always buzzing around, but the little small ones. And he said, how am I supposed to get them? I said, you have to catch them because I don't know how to catch them. I said, well, I can catch them for you, but it's going to cost you. And so I started selling the food for the lizards to my friends, and they're cultivated a new business.
On. Did you end up selling him a second lizard?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And funnily enough, they started to get a lot more diverse in what I started to catch, big huntsmans, and then it was quite an. But that's the sort of things you did as a kid because we didn't have any of this techno stuff that the kids are playing on these days.
And you were finishing high school?
That was primary school.
That was primary school.
Then we relocated, went to high school. At the age of...
Were you a good student?
No, I wasn't. I shouldn't be saying this with my son in the room.
When he was going to school, you were probably, Dad had all A's, he was a good student, so...
Well, I actually avoided the subject, but I did say to Jermaine that he really needed to be a good student. Because if he applied himself, then he can utilize those skill sets. But I was challenged with listening to a teacher ramble on for a while.
You know what's interesting? A lot of entrepreneurs, including myself, really had the same issues. Because clearly we're not stupid, you know what I mean? But I always kind of felt like, I was paying attention to things that I was really interested in. Things that I wasn't, like science, like who needs to learn all this shit, you know what I mean? So I feel like I was being tortured listening to my teacher.
Yep, absolutely. No, look, I wasn't a good student. I think I was easily distracted, but I wanted more. I'm a more practical guy. Show me how to do something and I will perfect it. But tell me to write essays about it.
Yes.
Hurt my hand until I go blue. It just didn't interest me. And it didn't matter how much I tried. It just, but as you say, like sports, for example, bring it on.
Yes,
I was very active. Too. But anything that had to sit there with theory and numbers, it was just it was just a bit boring. So at the age 12, my mother then got diagnosed with leukemia, unfortunately. And back then, leukemia was not as prevalent as probably what it is now, and certainly the therapy behind it and in curing wasn't as good as it is today. So unfortunately, at the age of 13, halfway through 13, I lost my mother to leukemia, and she was 39. So that was essentially the turning point when what was essentially everything up until that point was a dream. A dream in that mum and dad, brother, nice house. When I say nice house, very modest in comparison to today. And then everything turned. Everything changed at that point, at the age of 13. So we were at a bit of a crossroads, and my father said, 48 hours, and this is quite incredible, but 48 hours prior to my mother passing, my father's business, which was a photography store, burnt to the ground. And that was arson. So we didn't tell my mother, who was in intensive care at the time. And so 48 hours later, she passed. So essentially in 48 hours, we lost pretty much everything. So it was essentially...
Sorry to hear that. Did your mom know Vicks before that she only got Vicks to live?
No.
So she didn't know when the last day was coming?
So, no. So back then, the way to cure was essentially the only way that I understood was a bone marrow transplant. And the statistics of you had to get it from a sibling to have the same bone marrow. And the statistics of having a sibling that has the same bone marrow was quite low. So at the time, she has one brother and one sister here in Australia, and the rest were all in Egypt. So they did some tests, and they found her brother was in Egypt who had the same bone marrow. So they flew him out, and he did the operation, and it was a huge success. And then, unfortunately, she copped a virus, and that virus spread and ultimately killed her.
Very sad. I got a very, very good friend, and his wife, Jessica, she got diagnosed with cancer just under 17, 18 months ago. 46 years old, that's our age, right? She got diagnosed with cancer less than 18 months ago. 4 kids, 7, 9, 11, 16. And she passed away 3 days ago. Very, very sad, especially, yourself. You were, very young, 13 years old, to live without mom. So how did Dad take that?
It was interesting. Mum was the center of the universe.
Of course.
The center of everything. Dad was the person you went to ask for something to get a straight no without even listening to the whole question. So he really wasn't involved in our lives other than you work, generate money, but mum was everything.
Which is interesting. There's a saying where I come from, and it's probably everywhere around the world. They're saying, mum, every room has 4 corners. Normally, if it's a square room, it's got 4 corners. Mom, she's really holding the 3 corners, and Dad is just 1 corner. Mom is really holding that bonds.
Yes, yeah. And I think that was very relevant back in our days when we were younger.
Yes.
It was, the mums were super mums, essentially.
Yeah, of course.
They did everything. And there was a lot of reliance on the mother to do a lot.
So you were clearly close to your mum.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Essentially, we had no relationship. Both my brother and I had no relationship with our father other than he was just a father. And remembering that he wasn't with us for the first, in my case, 6 years.
Yes.
So when he came onto the scene, it was still mum was center of everything. But when she passed, it was a case of losing our mother and getting to know our father. And that was very challenging, very challenging.
Yes.
So for losing everything after 48 hours, we were at that crossroads to decide what was going to happen. And remembering my father essentially had no other skills and running his own business was the only thing, but now it's burnt to the ground. The repayments were behind on the mortgage. I now know, didn't know at the time, I was too young.
Yes.
And so I remember the night my mum passed, we were all sitting on the bed. My dad's mum had come out to Egypt to help us to cook and clean and everything while Dad was running the business. So she essentially was mum for a while. And we sat on the bed on the night she passed and Dad said, what do you want to do? Now, at that time, I was very close to my grandmother and she was telling me all these stories about Egypt. And as far as I was concerned, I've never seen Egypt because I was 3.
I actually want to visit Egypt. Anyway, we'll talk about it later.
I'll take you there. And so I said, let's go to Egypt. There's nothing left for us here. Let's go to Egypt and try that. So we agreed on that night that we were going to move to Egypt and essentially move to live. So it was but at the time, I was clearly far too young to understand what that actually meant. As far as I was concerned, Egypt was the same as Australia, with the difference being that, they speak Arabic, which I was able to do. But nothing else is different. So we shipped all our furniture into a container. Off it went to Egypt.
Age 13.
Age 13.
Moved to Egypt.
Moved to Egypt.
So that was yourself, your dad, and your brother.
Correct.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, this story is getting interesting.
Mm-hmm. So we moved, and as I said, it was a very rude awakening in life because everything that you can think of that a father should be, could be, would be, was not. It was essentially when she passed, my father had turned around and said, right, you are no longer young boys, you're men, and treated us pretty much that way.
Looking back, do you think that was the right thing to do or not?
No. Yes, in certain areas, giving us more information. I remember my father's perfect saying every time we used to have a chat was in Arabic. He would say, tomorrow when you grow up, I will tell you this. And we used to always go, no, we're old enough now, tell us now. I never heard that after my mother passed away ever again. Nothing was off limits, whether it was anything. You think about it, if you asked a question, he will tell it, and whether it was relevant or age appropriate, it was all better off. So it was grow up and grow up quick, because my father didn't know how to raise kids, essentially. He'd never done it at that point. He had 2 teenage or young, soon-to-be teenage boys on his hands, and he didn't know how to deal with it. So, and then we were in Egypt. And yeah, that did not work at all. So we moved there. The country didn't work. We couldn't get into school there. The academic system was just completely different. We tried to get into English-speaking schools. That didn't work. So for 6 months at the age of 13, we simply roamed, sat out the front of the business that my dad was then setting up, and we just mucked around and did nothing. And that was extremely dangerous because at 13, we should have certainly... I was 13.
Especially when at that time, you're just developing yourself as a young individual.
Correct, exactly. So it was a very delicate and very dangerous age to allow your kids not to be disciplined and also to be in school. So anyway, it is what it is. My father at that point was setting himself up again, trying to reestablish his base in Egypt. Long story short, because there was lots of trials and tribulations, but he essentially had lost my mother's life insurance money at that point, took all the money that we had that he had come across with, and he thought that he was going to be this wealthy Egyptian because of the currency conversion. But little did he know, in that period of time, the whole world had changed, the currency had changed, and Egypt was actually quite fruitful. So he got the money, we got there, he set up a business, failed dismally, lost everything, literally everything. And yeah, during that time anyway, he had met another woman very quickly. So,
and as a kid, you want to stab her and him.
Yeah.
That sounds really terrible.
There was
because
a lot of
I know
questions.
when, I love my mom. I'm very close to my mom. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And if my mom passed away, and if I was 13, with me, it's like, Dad, you're not allowed to have another mom ever, not alone soon. So
correct.
So I think as a young individual, mom is all you know.
Yeah. Look, it was very, very tough for him to make that decision pretty quickly. But in hindsight, I understand my father was very dependent on a spouse and he couldn't live on his own. He certainly couldn't deal with 2 teenage boys. But he did. He met another woman who also had 3 kids. So that was another level of challenges. But 6 months in Egypt, that didn't work. And after my father basically blew all the money, he said, we need to go back to Australia because my kids need to go to school. But in reality, it was the money had run out.
Yes.
He had nothing left. So we then moved back to Australia and we moved in with my then essentially stepmother and my now step brothers and sisters.
Yes. So did your dad, when he came back to Australia, did he ever start a business again?
No. Not at that point, but fast track another probably 5 years. And then he started a pawnbroking business. So yes, he did. It was pawnbroking.
How did that go?
Really good, but not because of what he did. It's because of what I did.
I'm going to stop you there for a second. And you tell me if I'm asking too many questions. I'm actually enjoying this conversation with yourself. Anybody can start business. I mean, anybody. I think $2,000 register a company and start something, right? Some people, I won't say they're not meant to be in business, but they just didn't develop the skill to last in business, right?
Yep.
What do you think? Why was your dad failing?
Arrogance was one significant one. He felt that he was the smartest person in the room, no matter which room he entered, with not a good understanding of Australian law.
Yes.
He couldn't speak English very well. And he didn't really invest the time to perfect his art of whatever it is that he selected.
Yes.
So he had a number of challenges that now I reflect and say there's a number of reasons why. What was interesting, though, is that through the storytelling that he did as we were young men, I can relate to and I can understand the message he was trying to get across.
Yes.
So there was some wisdom in the words.
Yes.
The execution was all wrong because he wasn't applying it to today's society. He wasn't applying it to the Australian way. It was a bit jumbled, if that makes any sense.
Yes. Is your dad alive today?
He is.
He's alive.
He's alive.
Are you close to your dad now?
I'll say yes.
Yes. I will read between lines.
Well, I did everything when I set up and was able to afford the things that I can afford. Regardless of that background, I did everything for my father to the best of my ability to ensure that he never saw another day of hardship. Because at the end of the day,
He's
he's my father. He's my father.
Can't change that.
And nor would I want to. It is what it is. That's the cards you dealt. I'm not going to take a tantrum out on the world because I didn't have the best father. But what it did do is allow me to try and perfect, to the best of my ability, to be the best father I can be.
And I can tell you this, I do know your son. He does think the world of you.
I appreciate it.
So, and that comes from his mouth, by the way. And I will say this. So coming back to Australia, you were 14, 15 years old. So back into school. And now you don't have just one brother. You got an army of kids around the house. There's like 5 of you. Mm-hmm. And finish high school?
Nope. So that didn't last too long. That happy Brady Bunch family didn't last long. 3 months, I think, was the total.
Yes.
She quickly said, I cannot have these boys living here with my girls. And that was quite bizarre for us because as far as we were concerned, we were stepbrother and sister. But she saw it as in there is a possibility for something to happen because we were teenage boys. So she put the pressure on my father to say, these boys need to go. You need to get a place of your own and do your own thing. So my father found a place and we all moved into a house. And at that point, we were way below the poverty line. We had no furniture. We had nothing, essentially. I remember
And Dad got separated with the lady?
No. Oh, no. So he basically said, all right, well, I'll get our own place and he will try and manage the relationship between his wife and his kids to the best of his ability. But what transpired was he would say, okay, I will spend 6 days a week with you kids and 1 day a week I will go and spend with her.
Yes.
And whilst obviously we were at school, she wasn't working, can be with her during the day. That 1 day then became 2 and then 2 became 3 and then it got turned that it was 5 days he was out of the house and 2 days he would be home.
And you were there with your brother?
I was there with my brother. By this time, I was 14. Now we're 14.
How old was your brother?
He was turning 16. And that was the most dangerous, pivotal point of our lives because you do not leave 2 teenage boys independently. And where we grew up...
I'd be scared to leave 2 of us somewhere for a month, not long kids.
And the area where we grew up was, at the time, the second most dangerous suburb in Australia, which is in the north in Melbourne. So it was a very, very dangerous experience. Yeah.
And 2 boys, really, foreigners.
2 foreign boys, and there was just prior to that, there was a lot of racism and there was that sort of stuff. But at the time, I define it as when the coloured would start to come up in the world and we started to realise that they are faster and they're tougher. And so with that came the ego and teenage revelry and then that's when everything started to go really wrong. Yeah.
Yes. How wrong?
Pretty much nearly as wrong as you can expect. So we were independent, wrong crowd, wrong people. Yes. Lot of violence, lots of drugs around everywhere.
No money.
No money. No. What was that? No. It was a case of just live on what you can as you can from wherever you can. Mm.
And you were really close to your brother.
Very close. We're inseparable.
And then 14, 15, 16, how did you survive?
At the time, first we went to what is Oz study. So because we were still at school trying to.
It was about, let me guess, it was about $170 a fortnight or something like that.
Yeah, it was something like that. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I remember.
It was ridiculous. And then we started to talk to our friends about, hey, we should all move in together and get a new place. And that was just music to my father's ears because he's like, okay, then that means I don't have to pay for anything for you guys at all.
But also recipe for disaster to put a couple of boys in a house. It'll be running a freaking muck. Mm-hmm. Oh, my God.
And run amok we did. So there was no curfew. There was no nothing. It was
And at the most dangerous age, 14, 15, 16, 17, because at that time, you really don't know what's right and wrong, right? You know, you think your friends and your mates are your world. And when you don't have father or mom influencing direction of your life, you know, it can very easily for kids to slip and go to the wrong direction.
We knew what was right and wrong. And remembering at this point, as a 15-year-old, I was extremely, and my brother, we were extremely mature, way beyond our years because of the life that we lived.
You kind of had no choice but to mature.
Correct. We had no choice. It was a survival game. So we were not your average typical 15-year-olds. But so we knew what was right and was wrong, but it was essentially of a means to an end. We had to do what we needed to do to survive, essentially. And I remember at the age of 16 coming to 17, I remember just really thinking, am I even going to survive to see, you know, young manhood? I really didn't think that I would survive, let alone potentially get married at some point or have a family. That was just completely unreachable. Yeah, it was pretty brutal.
So at what stage did you leave your school?
Halfway through year 10.
And never went back?
Never went back to normal
school. Yes.
So,
and did your brother finish grade 12?
No, he left halfway through. He was in year 11 at the time. He left halfway through year 11. But so we left school because we could. Because
there was no parents telling you
Dad wasn't
go
sitting
to
there
school.
saying, hey, you need to go to school, get up, or anything like that. So we just left school and pretty much became louts and bums and did nothing with no education of any type. But we were very gifted in terms of life, in terms of life experiences, and we communicated very well. There probably is two skills: real life experiences and being able to communicate.
Yes.
So that happened, and then my father was running a pawnbroking business at the time, and he was doing okay. We never saw any fruits of that benefit. It was going all to his then wife, which we had nothing to do with at all. We completely cut ties. You know, we would call our father every couple of weeks, and that was the extent of the relationship.
Sorry, I'm just going to butt in because I know the story here. Is this after Egypt at 15? Or?
Yeah, that's where we've gone past it. You must have fallen asleep or somewhere. Sorry?
When you went to
Hey, you need to watch this later.
Okay, yeah.
No, this is after.
That's a good point.
Okay,
No.
Okay, so what Jermaine's referring to, yeah, you're right, I did skip a bit. So when we got back from Egypt and we rebelled, I rebelled quite badly. And my father thought, I was the youngest, I'm going to lose my son. So he rang Egypt, my grandmother at the time, and said, send me a ticket, because we had no money. Send me a ticket. I'm sending Sam back to Egypt. And
Second time back.
Second time. And this time it was dictated to, you're going back to Egypt, because he wanted to get me away from what was at that point extremely bad influences.
So you were just in a bad crowd. You were doing more
Really
damage
bad.
to yourself than anybody else.
I was at that point getting to seeing guns and knives, and it was pretty extreme.
You were in a rebel.
I was very rebellious.
Yes.
And it's dangerous to have a teenager
With no fear.
with no fear. It was
Which comes handy later in the life.
Correct. And when exercising that muscle in the right
Correct.
can be very powerful, but in the wrong world, it's very problematic.
It's powerful as well, in just not the right direction.
Correct. So my father, my father said, send me a ticket. And it was not said lightly. He was screaming it to my family in Egypt. So they did, out of fear of what's going on. They had no idea. And I got shipped over to Egypt on my own.
And you could speak
Arabic.
Arabic?
Correct.
Can you still speak it?
Yes. Fluently.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Can son speak?
Understands a lot, but says a few words, knows the key words, but not fluently. No.
Learning.
Learning. Still learning. He should have learned by now.
If you don't work hard enough, we're gonna go halves on the ticket. We're gonna send him back to Egypt.
I like that idea. It certainly will make you grow up, that's for sure. So I got shipped back with the promise that my brother and my father were going to settle affairs in Australia, and then we're going to come and follow as well. That was the plan. So round 2, attempt Egypt again. And at that point,
who did you stay there with?
With my grandmother.
Yes.
The problem was that I was too young to ask the right questions. How's this going to work? But essentially, I got shipped back. It was a 40-degree day, and my uncle picked us up with my cousin, with my grandmother, took us to the shop that my father had established that shut down because it failed. And you haven't been to Egypt yet, but essentially if you leave Egypt, a building in Egypt, vacant for a day, you're going to get a millimetre of dust. We'd been gone now for 2.5 odd years. So we went to the shop, and I thought the intent, so he said to me, you're going to work. I'm going to teach you how to be a man, and you're going to run this business with your brother and we're going to work.
So your brother went there with you as well?
No. He's saying, we're coming.
Ah.
We're going to settle the
But you were just sent by yourself.
He said, you're going first because I'm getting you out of here, because I was at that point in danger of being lost, according to him. So he sent me back, and I remember this 40-degree day, I got picked up at like 5 a.m, got taken to the shop, and I'm thinking, okay, he wants me to have a look at what, the work that's involved to get this thing up and report back to him. And so I sat outside with my cousin, we had a chat, and I went back inside, and my uncle starts kissing my grandmother goodbye. And then he comes and kisses me goodbye, and I'm kissing him going, where are you going? And he said, I have to go to work. And I said, well, we're coming with you, are we not? And he said, no, you're staying here. And I was so confused. I said, what do you mean we're staying here? Staying where? He said, here. And my grandmother turned around and said, what do you think? Of course we're going to stay here. And I said, what do you mean sleep here? And she said, yes. I said, how? It was the most filthy building. And it was a shop. There was no beds. There was no bed. There was nothing. I said, how are we going to sleep here? And she said, we're going to clean it and we're going to stay here. That was the beginning, the first day of the worst period of my life.
Yeah. How long did you stay there in Egypt?
8 months.
Were you hungry? Physically hungry?
Yes and no. My grandmother was the best cook.
You can't be grandma.
It wouldn't be a grandmother if they went.
You can't beat grandma's cooking.
You cannot.
Ever.
That's true. That is true. She was amazing. But
or mom's
rations.
cooking.
Correct.
Or mom's cooking. I always say you can get married 100 times. No wife can cook better than mom or grandma. No offense to all the wives. I said this I said this in front of Giselle now as well. It's like my mom's cooking is just
it's right up there.
All my grandmas and
So we we basically lived in the shop.
Do you think you going back has changed you as a young individual?
Oh, absolutely.
So it was a right move from your father at that moment to actually send you there for 8 months.
Absolutely. It was the worst time of my life. I literally I remember every night after going to work. So he had this photographic.
So did you that following back as well, or he never came?
So that's the challenge. So it was, we're coming when? A couple of weeks. Then a couple of weeks more. Then a couple of weeks more. Couple of weeks more. And it went on for 8 months. At about the 7.5 month mark. Back then, there was no mobile phones, there was no internet, there was no nothing. So it was go to what we called Central, go to a phone box in the main thing to get a call. And my brother rang me and he said, Sam, I've only got a little bit of limited time because it was very expensive phone calls. He said, I just had a big fight with Dad. And I said to him, I don't care what you do, bring me back my brother. And he said, you're not going to see your brother again. I'm not bringing him back. He's learning to be a man and he's never coming back. So my brother then chucked a very big tantrum with my father. And then he rang me with my best friend and said, Dad is not planning to send you back. I don't know what to do, because you're talking about thousands of dollars for a ticket. And when he's just a kid, he goes, I have no idea what to do, but he's not bringing you back. And I remember I just saw dizzy. I just saw red. And I said, is that what he said? He said, yeah. I said, Ash, his name was Ash. I said, I'll be there in a week's time. He said, how? I said, I don't care if I have to rob a bank. I'm coming home. And I hung up and I rang my cousin.
How old were you then? 15, 16, 17? 15.
And I rang my cousin and I said, I need your help. And I told him what happened. He said, what do you want me to do? I said, I'm going to raid this shop, which is the shop we're living in, because there was all little bits and pieces of cameras. And I'm going to get my hands on everything I can, and I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to buy a one-way ticket, and I'm going home. And he said, if you do that, your father is going to kill you at the airport. And I said, I don't care. He's going to kill me in Australian land. I'm going home. That was it. I literally, for that whole 8-month period, I would go ride my bike to the Nile in Egypt and just dream of coming back to Australia. That's all I wanted, more than anything. You could have asked me for $1 billion.
And at that time, did you end up hating the country, Egypt?
Oh, at the time, yeah.
At the time.
At the time, I couldn't stand it. I wanted to be. There was no. You could have asked me for $1 billion.
Not that country is bad. Not the country is bad. It's the circumstances that make you not love something.
But the circumstances in Egypt, holistically. So when we went the first time, the culture shock was just outrageous.
Especially as a young individual.
Oh, absolutely.
As an older man, you love different traditions. If I go to Italy, I want to sit with old Italians. If I go to Egypt, I want to sit with old Egyptians, experience the culture, right? But older we get, we enjoy different things in life.
Correct.
Age 16.
No, not going to happen. So I did exactly that. So I raided the shop. I sold everything I could. I literally went to Singapore Airlines as a 15-year-old kid with waddles of reams of cash. And I said, I want a one-way ticket to Australia. And they sold it to me. And I booked a flight. And I went home. And I remember I rang Ash and I said, I'm coming home. He said, how? What did you do? I said, don't worry, I'll tell you all about it, because it was a 3-minute phone call. I said, here's the flight details. Write them down quickly. I'm coming home. About an hour later, the phone rings and my father rang. And he said, I've just heard that you're coming home. I said, that's right. And he said, what did you do? And I said, I sold everything that you've got. And he swore at me. I said, you can swear whatever you want. I don't care. I'm coming home. He said, all right, what's your flight details? He said, I'll meet you at the airport. And I was like, what? 8 months of pain and that's all I got? And I said, oh my God, I should have done this 7 months ago. However, I realized that those 8 months, what really shaped me for the future.
I have to say, in every bad, there is good.
I believe that.
And if you didn't develop life skills due to your circumstances at such a young age, maybe you wouldn't be where you are today.
I'm positive I wouldn't be.
Because think about this. Most 15 years old kids, let's face it, you're still a freaking kid at age 15.
Absolutely.
You're still a kid, you know. And right now, any 15 years old kid, get a mobile, Google, buy, Flight Center, whatever it is, buy it. Everything is easy. But that was 33 years ago. There's no internet. There's no mobile. There's no iPhone. There's no any phone, period. Is just thinking now, how the hell did you actually, find a way to buy a ticket, find a passport, to fly to the new country, or sell whatever you can to find it? It's just so much developing at such a young age. At age 15, I mean, I would panic today at age 45 if I had to do that without technology that we are all used to today.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it was scary, but again.
So what happened when you got on the plane? You came to Australia?
So I came to Australia, landed. My father and my brother and all my friends were there. It's the magical moment. And he literally dropped us home. And I remember he cooked. He goes, do you want to eat breakfast? And I said, yes. And he said, all right. He goes, what do you want to eat? And I said, eggs. And so in he went and he cooked something like 8 eggs. And I walked into the kitchen and I looked at him and I go, who are all those eggs for? He looked at me and said, what do you mean? You and your brother and I. I said, 8. We're going to eat 8. He just looked at me and said, what is wrong with you? I said, Grandma used to only give me 1 egg. And if it was really good, I'd get 2. And so I didn't go hungry, but there were rations.
Yes.
And I remember eating those eggs and I hated them.
Yes.
I didn't enjoy them at all. because to me there was plentiful. It was too much because I didn't appreciate it anymore. And so after he had breakfast, he said, okay, all right, well, I'll leave you with your brother. And back to his wife he went. And I didn't see him for another week. Hadn't seen his son for 8 months.
What happened then? Did you start getting work or did you go back to the same?
So at that point, that's when, well, pretty much my brother and I were louts, bums. We didn't do anything. And then at the age of 17, I met my wife. So I went and did an IT course in TAFE. It was a 4-month short course.
I'm going to jump here. Still together?
Yes. Happily married for 27 years. Yes. Been together for 30 years. Still going very strong, inseparable. The whole family, Jermaine and my wife and I, we are the tightest knit family you'll ever meet.
Is she on the Gold Coast now as well?
Oh, yes, she is. And she was saying...
How long you guys are staying?
For a while. Well, whenever I want to go back.
Okay. Well, anyway, the discussion after this remind me we can organize lunch at our place. So she can come here and we can have a lunch at our home.
Oh, that would be lovely.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So we met at 17. I was 17. She was 20. So she's older than me. I had to be.
Giselle is older than me as well. Freaking cougars.
Absolutely.
They tricked us, I call it. Because Giselle and I met when we were 18 years old. I was like, hey.
Well, at that time, at 17, I was so not interested in my age, girls my age. They were just giggly little girls. And I...
Yeah, but because you lost your mom at age 13, you know, you run crowd, traveled back to Egypt alone. So you really developed yourself as an adult at such a young age.
Correct. And when I met my wife, it sounds extraordinary, but when I first met with her, I said, look, I'm not interested in a girlfriend. I'm not interested in playing around. I'm interested for the long term. She was a very good girl. She ticked a number of my personal boxes that I wanted in a woman. And I just said, look, this is not a game. This is serious. Now, at that point, you got to picture this. She's a very good girl from a very wholesome, protected family. And I was a gangster, essentially.
There's a freaking Tupac Biggie Smalls coming into the freaking house.
I had long hair at the time. I had an earring. I had an iced tea jacket, which is a rapper that said louder than fuck.
Yeah.
And I walked into her mum's and father's house and she goes, hi, this is Sam. And I'm like, hey. And they're like, no, this is not happening. So anyway, we got together, but I was so motivated at that point, I wanted to ensure that the trauma that I experienced, I got out of it at any cost. I started working with my father in the pawnbroking business. At that point, I was very focused in life.
Did your brother work in the business as well?
Tried.
Couldn't get along with your dad?
No. My brother's trauma was a lot harder taken than me. So physically, he was literally a beast. He was the strongest person I knew physically. Emotionally, he was a mess.
See, I always say, your mind is your best friend and your biggest enemy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, nothing can beat you more than your own mind. Mm-hmm. No person, nothing. You know, I always say, whatever we convince ourselves into, we are right. Mm. You know what I mean? And I always say as well, specifically in business, the one that can handle the most pressure is the one that wins. Mm. Because reality is we all react differently. Some people, you know, small problem or problem that could be nothing to two of us, we, you know, find the solution within 2 minutes, whatever the solution is, good or bad or ugly, and we move on and keep going. But some people really can't.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Your mind is your most powerful muscle. And if you frame your mind in the right way, retreat in your own mind, you can overcome anything and you can achieve anything.
Yes. And then you went back to work with your father?
So I went back and worked with my father in the pawnbroking business, and I excelled the business beyond belief. I remember essentially, I would ask him. I started to outplay and outwit him. I would say, I remember this one time. Back then we had CDs, if you remember CDs.
Yes,
After tape.
I remember the tapes.
Yeah, tapes, and then we'd go, yeah, just right, your mind.
When CD, and I remember those CD players, you know, the round ones. Like that was really cool when you got those.
Yeah. So I remember upstairs in the pawnbroking business, there was a storage room with a bunch of stuff that he'd bought over the years. And I was sitting there going, oh, I need to make some money. I want to make some money. I want to do something. So I went upstairs and found this box of CDs. And they were all the same. They were brand new of a particular band. So I went to my dad and I said, how much do you want for these CDs? He goes, just sell them for whatever you can. They've been upstairs for ages. I said, how much? He said, anything you can. I said, well, what does that mean? I don't want to go sell them and then you tell me it was too high, too low. Well, like, what do you want? He said, try and get me $2 a CD. I said, okay. $2 is what you want. I said, okay, great. No worries. That's all right, I'll be back. And I'd realised that there was a CD back then, secondhand CDs used to sell, and tapes and those sorts of things, because they were very expensive, like $30 a CD, and back then it was a lot of money. So I went up to the music store and I said to him, I've got this music and these brand new, and they said, anyway, long story short, I negotiated to sell him this box for $8 a CD. So I said, okay, he goes, when can you bring him? And I said, I'll bring him to you right now. And he goes, they're not stolen. I said, no, I own a pawnbroking business down the road. Here's our details. I'll give you all my ID. He said, great, bring him now. I'll pay you straight away. So I went back and I went straight upstairs. Didn't say anything to Dad. Grabbed this box of CDs and just walked down. He goes, where are you going? I said, I'll be back in a minute. And I went down and I gave this guy the box and he gave me the waddles of cash. And I came over and I said, and I walked back in and I remember sitting down in front of the television and I just started watching television. And he's just looking at me. He goes, hey. I said, yeah. He goes, where's the CDs? I said, oh, that's right. I sold them. That's right. You wanted $2 a CD, right? Yeah. I said, there was X amount of CDs. I said, so $150, yeah. So I pulled out all the cash and I went, there's $150. And I remember him holding this $150. He just started staring. He's looking at it and then he looks at me. And he goes, what do you think you're doing? I said, what? He said, what's that money you put in your pocket? I said, it's my profit. You said you wanted $2 a CD, so I sold you. I got you the $150. And he goes, that's business. That's business money. You can't take that. And I said, but you said you wanted $2. He said, well, this is why I employ you, because you can do things better than me. And
Yes.
And so I couldn't even hustle my father. And so I took over the business and I started to run it and made it very successful. And at the time, I was on unemployment benefits, working for my father and pretending that I can't get a job. And then I said at that time, it was just the infancy of prove that you're trying to get a job. So I had a caseworker and I went to Centrelink and they said, you need to get a job. You've been on the dole for too long. So I went back and Dad said, how'd you go? And I said, look, they really want me to get a job, but I'm trying to avoid it, Dad. As in, like, I'm the center of your universe now.
Yes,
he just laughed. He goes, well, why don't you get a job? And I just looked at him and I said, and who would run this business? I think it'll be fine without you. I did well without you. I'll be fine without you. And I'm like, really? He said, just go get the job. And I said, do you think I can't get a job? He said, just go and get the job. So that gave me anger. And I went, okay.
How old were you then?
I was 18.
And you got a girlfriend at that time?
I've got my wife, Lorraine, girlfriend, yes. And at the age of 18, I went to the very first job interview I've ever gone for, and I got the job straight away.
What was the job?
Selling mobile phones.
Right.
And at that time,
Oof.
It was huge.
Gold.
Oh, yeah. Mobile phones were like $1,100.
Yes.
And I worked for a company that came out with this special for $99 mobile phones, but it was the old brick. It was the ugliest thing you've ever seen, but everyone wanted a mobile phone.
Was it a Nokia or Ericsson?
It was this like Chinese no name. It was no Ericsson, no Nokia, no nothing. It was this brick ugly thing. It was disgusting.
Yes.
And so I started selling mobile phones. Well, actually, in fact, the first job I actually got was, when I got the job, it was to churn. So in the olden days, it's still probably prevalent now, but if you can turn someone from Optus or Vodafone, actually Vodafone was around, it was more Optus at the time, churn them over to Telstra, because we were a Telstra premium dealer, the principal used to get like $250 for the churn.
Yes.
So my job was to get people to convert from Optus to Telstra. And there was no internet. So it was literally just Yellow Pages dial. And when you get a sequence of 0418 and a number, you
Yes.
knew it was Optus. So you would keep calling. And the idea was to try and churn to get 5-6 churns a day.
How long did you last in the job?
I lasted probably a year.
And did you go back to father's business again?
No. I lasted a year because I completely destroyed their sales numbers and they tried to rip me off because I was a kid.
Yes, yes.
And they had to pay me so much money, and then they made up this. Anyway, I had to leave on principle, and I then went to the next interview, which was selling, then was considered an IT product, consumables, which was toner cartridges, ribbons.
Yes, yes.
And I got into that, and that was the infancy of my setting up my career that I ended up being in for the next 25 years, which was the IT industry.
Yes.
So selling consumables, then adding so much value to my customers, and they were very large corporates, and then started selling them true IT products, so PCs, laptops,
Yes.
networking products, learning on the job.
So that's how your career started.
Correct.
Real career started.
Real career time.
Everything before that, I felt like was training for things that, you were meant to do later. At that time, when you were, I'm guessing, at that time when you were starting to get your career, around that time, you lost your brother.
Yes, definitely. So when I lost Ash, he was 23. I turned 21. I got married at 20.
I got married at 22.
Great.
I thought I was the craziest one, but you kicked my ass.
And if you remember my background, every friend of mine that was there saying, this is a ridiculous joke, you're going to be out of this in no time at all.
Yes.
And here we are. So my wife and I, from 17, we didn't spend a dime. We saved everything. I was so fixated, absolutely fixated, on buying a home and having it paid off to ensure that trauma will never be created again. So I shared this dream with her, and she had no money either and come from a very humble background. So she said, whatever you see fit, let's do it. And we put hand in hand and we worked our asses off. We would not spend anything. We would not, let's spend it, let's go have fun. No. And then at the age of, so that was from 17 until 20. At the age of 20, we put down our deposit for our home and paid for our wedding. Not a dime from anybody. And we turned up at our wedding, hoping to God someone was going to give us some money. So it was the first time we were coming to the Gold Coast. We'd booked the flights and the accommodation, but we had no money. Literally, I am not kidding, not a dollar. And I was praying to God someone was going to give us some money so we can actually spending money. Otherwise, we'd be in the hotel for 7 days. And sure enough, we did. And we came to Queensland and we went back to our house. We were more excited to stay home because we just bought our new first home, which was our dream home. But we had no furniture, but it didn't matter. We would have been happy to sleep on the floor. So at that point, I bought my home, just got married. My brother came to the wedding, and it was shortly after that. So he was not doing well. Really got in worse and worse and worse into the wrong crowd, and eventually it killed him at the age of 23. Yeah. So we really went in separate directions. I did a significant pivot, and he just kept going down the path that essentially I was destined to go down as well.
You couldn't get out of it.
I think every day, my wife, if it wasn't for my wife and that support, they say behind every great man is a greater woman, and I'm a true believer of that. If it wasn't for her, I probably would have gone down that path. She gave me the ability to breathe and focus to allow me to execute what my true purpose was in my journey. So it was great, but it wasn't. Obviously, I lost my brother, and that was very, very tragic. My father somewhat fell apart. I bought the house. I said to him, I couldn't deal with him and losing my brother because we were very close. But the tail end, we started to drift apart because we came from two totally different worlds at that point. And then I said to my father, just go to Egypt, just go to your family because I can't handle you falling apart on me, because at that point I had to be the rock for the family. So my father did, and he came back. So when that happened, he then realized everything we've been telling him for years about this woman that you're with is poison. And he went overseas, got married again.
With a new wife or?
With a new
The third one.
Third wife.
First was your mom, then second later, and the third one.
And then came back and told the second one, it's over.
Oh, so he was with the second one when he got the third one.
Yeah.
Right.
It's quite a Melrose Place episode.
I reckon, I reckon your dad was real gangster.
He knew he couldn't survive alone, so he set everything up and got his third wife. And I'm like, at that point, I'm obviously an adult. I'm married myself. I'm like,
Yes.
So anyway, so he left the second wife and he lived in a very, very dilapidated house. Really not good at all. And so I started my journey in my career in IT. I was working two jobs. I was by day. So I became, at the age of 19, I did a year. They gave me my first company car. To put it in perspective, it was a brand new Holden Commodore. And at that time, a 19-year-old driving this, it was like
a plane.
Where did you score this?
Yes.
Where did you swipe this from? And it was a company car on my P plates. And all my peers were in their late 30s, families, and they were like, this kid has got this company car. But I did really well for the company. So by day, I was a sales executive selling IT products. And by night, I was a pizza delivery boy. And I'd rocked up and they were like, what are you doing? This car, you're driving this. And they're like, you're a sales executive. Why are you doing this? I said, I don't care what people think. I want to pay my mortgage off. I was just absolutely fixated on, I want this home paid off.
When did it hit you that you wanted to start your own business? What age?
I would have been 30.
30 years old.
29.
So for 10 years, for quite some time, you were really working, selling IT products.
Not yet. It was 9 years. In that journey, I went from, a normal sales executive to the top of my game in the country and earning an obscene amount of money.
For the company.
And for myself.
Yeah, but for the company, majority
Of
for
course.
what you would make for
Absolutely.
yourself.
I was making them millions of dollars every year, and they were giving me a portion of it. But
What was your first business that you said, okay, enough? I've grown some balls to say, fuck it, I'm going on my own.
Yeah. It was the IT business called GTM, Green Technology Management. It was essentially doing IT products, but mainly professional services. So we did a lot of IT services work for enterprise corporates, and we were the third largest IT decommissioning company that did. So essentially when companies did IT products, we'd take their secondhand and we would sell it around the world. So I did that, ran that for 8 years. It exploded. It was really good. And then a global multinational VC tapped me on the shoulder, and after a year and a half of negotiation of me keep saying no, eventually I ended up selling.
Am I allowed to ask how much did you sell it for?
I'd rather not say. I think
After this interview, I'm getting it out. I'm curious now. But after 8.5, 9 years, you sold it for the sum that results of hard work, running the business, taking the risk. It was worth it.
Absolutely. It was life-changing for me to be able to say, I now choose to work or do what I want to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was only about what? That was only about 10 years ago.
Yeah, 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
Correct.
Being in that business for 8 years, after any business, I've exited out of a couple of companies now. And after I start something and I spend time in the business, and if I get out of it, or when I get out of it, I ask myself, what have I learned? Mm-hmm. What have you learned out of that 8.5 years?
In the journey of running the business, well, I'm reflecting from my perspective now and the learnings I've had now. There are so many things I just did not know. The journey of time
it was
and
learn
education.
as you go, wing it as much as you can wing it.
Well, this is going to sound kind of weird. It's kind of like I knew what I was doing. I never had a fear of whether it was going to make it or not. I knew my shit. I knew my industry. I perfected my art, and I knew no one can do what I did in the space that we did it. We had a very niche service offering. So I never feared the possibility, but what I didn't know is I didn't understand the possibilities of where to take it from. So One Life Club, for example, talks about where to take the journey of business. The advisory boards and socializing ideas in the groups and talking about how to take your business to the next level. I didn't have any of that guidance. Had OLC been around at that time, I think that my exit would have been tenfold.
Yeah, but that's, I say the same. I say the same thing as well. The thing is, when you are starting in the journey, and sometimes, even if there are right people around you, you are so deep into running your own race, you kind of almost can't even see what else is behind you. I always say, discussion that I had with Simon, I said for 15, 20 years, when both of us were scaling our businesses, you don't know if it's raining outside, if it's blue sky, red sky, what month it is. You just head down, bum up. And so even if at the time, if there were many things out there, I don't think, I'm not sure how much we would allow ourselves to breathe, because it's just go, go, go. And were you always working when you were running that business 7 days a week?
Absolutely. But what was interesting, when I was in the PAYG world for that 9 years, I think I was probably technically a workaholic.
Yeah.
Like really extreme, like dangerously.
Are you still that today?
No.
Interesting.
No. I'm wiser. I'm not on the tools and spinning my wheels. You learn to be smarter of how to make money rather than...
First 40 years of my life, I've been working since I can almost say 4 years old, but actively working since I was 15. And one thing that I've inherited from my father, my grandfather, my 5 uncles, my 3 aunties, is work ethics. All workaholics. And took me very long time to learn there's a lot more. I'm a workaholic now in a different way.
Yes.
And what I'm wearing today is that's how I'm dressed these days. And I can work from home all day. And I can do a lot in 1 hour, what I would take 25.
Correct.
In the past. And sometimes I think now, most of my work is done me just thinking, analyzing and not doing what I was doing before. And I think, it takes time for us to grow in business as well and to learn how to let go and to learn, hey, we are not smartest people in this world.
No.
There's a lot more capable people and smarter people than us that we can actually employ. They can execute things on our behalf as well. I mean, all that comes with the age. One thing for sure, life the clock doesn't stop ticking.
No.
I mean, I'm going on 46, 48, Next thing is we are 70, 80, and this is not a rehearsal. This life, once it's over,
it's over.
It's over. And, what a friend of mine would say, the bullet that's going to kill you has already been fired. We don't know when we're going to go. I lost my sister when she was very young. You lost your brother when, he was very young. And a friend of mine he just lost a wife. She's 46. So I think the key in life is to learn the art of being present, the art of happiness, true meaning of time. And, I remember I come from a very humble family, a terrible past. I mean, your past, your childhood was not good. Mine wasn't much better. I remember being hungry for 4 years, not physically hungry to do well in my life, hungry for fucking food. And when I started doing well, every time I spoke to my mom, I would tell mom, hey, mom, I just made $1 million. I just did this property deal. I did that. Or, moms, they don't care. They want to know, did you eat well?
Yes.
How did you sleep? Yes. So now when I'm talking to my mom, I am present with my mom.
Amazing.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Same with my dad. They're not into the business, so I don't have to tell them, hey, I did this, I did that. They're not, like yesterday, in the same chair where you're sitting, I had my 10 years old nephew. And I was deep in conversation with him. And I was at his level, having fun.
Yep.
So I think as older we get, is just learning how to be present.
Yep.
Is so powerful. But it takes time to master and understand.
That's right.
And I think it takes us time to really understand the meaning of life, because as human, we are always running some kind of fucking race out there. And I always say, just stop for a moment, be present, in anything that we do.
Well, essentially that crossroad happened when Jermaine was 3, when I was living 90% abroad, working for this large corporate.
When you say which country are we talking?
It's still in Australia.
Yes.
But I was living abroad, meaning I was living out of a suitcase. I was interstate or overseas.
So constantly.
90% of the year. I was constantly
Did you
traveling.
employ many people before you sold the company?
50.
50, which is interesting. One of other One Life Club members, you need to meet him. Amazing guy. His name is Theo. He's got one of those Greek long surnames, so I can't freaking pronounce it whatsoever. But you know Theo.
Yes.
Amazing guy. Very similar story to both of us. And he runs a painting company, but, turns over hundreds of millions of dollars, got 600-700 staff, and beautiful guy. And one thing he says, Emil, when I started running my business, nobody told me how to manage people.
Yes. It can be challenging.
Yes.
I think one of the biggest challenges in a business is always the big one is finding the right staff, building the right team. But yeah, I had a different perspective on that. I had an ability to cultivate key skill sets from key individuals to bring the right people to the table to create a company that worked.
Yes.
Again, this is before the era of AI or anything else. So everything was systems driven, and it was all about creation of systems and on the grind. So everything was, how do you improve the efficiency, and you had to maximize the abilities of your team. So it was, it was fun, but I certainly could have done things better, even though, we never, from the first month I opened the company, we never lost money. We always made money. But there was so much more capacity and capability. But going back to what you were saying, just resonating, the work-life balance and being present, I did not have at all, which is my definition of workaholic at that point. And when Jermaine was 3, I remember going on to my normal interstate trip, and I got down on my knees and I said, Jermaine, come and give Daddy a kiss and a hug. And he was like, oh, okay. And he just came and did it so casually, like it was just the norm. And then he was constantly looking over his shoulder, making sure that he can see Mum. And as soon as Mum went around the corner, he ran after her. He was literally sewed to her legs. He would not leave Mum.
He was thinking to himself, who the fuck is this Egyptian older guy here in front of me?
It was at that time I realized.
Because you were constantly working, go, and hardly at home.
That's right. And I realized that my son's going to grow similar to what I did, not really knowing his father. Now, in my case, I was hard on the tools, working hard for the family to give him the platform that I wanted to give my children. But but at what cost? And the cost was,
Yes.
I realized
Yes.
when he was 3 that the cost was too great. And that's when I made the change. And also my wife was at her wit's end. At that point, raising a child.
And when you were working, when you were running that first business that you successfully sold, were you working with your wife?
Yes. Which is very difficult to typically do.
I always worked with Giselle. Always say if it was legal, one of us would be dead every day.
Yes. We ran it. Look, I was not a simple, because I was so driven for success, and everyone sort of had to get onto this fast pace,
Which is very hard to follow, because what I'm learning that you have obsessive personality when it comes to what you get committed towards. And I have too. What I mean obsessive, when I get into something, and in business, in this case, I don't want to just do okay. I am boundaries are there. We are going forward, further. And when you find obsessive or aggressive personalities in business, very few can follow. And I always say to Giselle, if I went through fire, she was right behind me. And at age 45, it's hard to know, was it the right thing to do or not? Financially, we have everything now, right? But at the time, are people like us fair to others around us?
Really interesting question. So with my team at that time, I had a lot of IT techs. So they would be out in the field in large corporates, predominantly doing the work after hours when the offices in the CBD would be shut down. And there have been many times that projects just go wrong. The rollout doesn't happen as anticipated, which meant the forecast of finishing at midnight got blown out. And sometimes people would work till 3, 4 in the morning. Emil, I never had any of my staff ever complain.
Yes.
They all were like, whatever it requires.
But that's also because you were leading by example. You were in trenches.
Correct. So that was the key difference, is that I tried to lead by example. I wasn't I'm here and you're there. I'm the owner and you're not. We all rolled our sleeves up and did what we need to do based on our skill sets. And my skill set happened to be running the company, this team members. But I would never in a minute not be in the trenches with them, physically doing labor if it needed it. And these guys were willing to do everything to sacrifice for the business because they really love this business and they love the fact of the growth that we had. And that was, and I recognize now, 10 years later, that was extremely powerful thing that we cultivated in the company. And that's...
Culture is everything.
Absolutely.
Culture, you don't have that, you will just
you
want to have stable business.
Yeah. So it was a journey. But I am glad that at the age of when Jermaine was 3, that I realized my ways and said, I need to make a change in my life. And
which is very powerful, Sam, because a lot of people never realize that. They do when it's too late.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. There's a movie always comes to my mind when I talk about this subject, Click, if you remember it, with Adam Sandler. It's about a remote control that you can basically fast forward life and rewind life.
Yes.
And if you watch the movie, it's an incredibly funny movie.
I would love some kind of technology come up with that. So I can see it, actually I don't like it. I better fucking change direction now so I don't end up being there.
Correct. But the principle of the key thing, the message in the story was about when he goes back to time is enjoy the present, enjoy the family while they're young, enjoy the happy times, just as much as you have to work. Of course we have to work. But I think I was so driven on the goal of business and wealth creation, and it was get on my train or get off, but nothing was going to stop me at any cost. And I'm fortunate that my wife, was just an angel that rode the train with me all the way through until we got to a point that she can start saying, well, no, now is enough. You have achieved what you wanted to achieve. And everyone's, number or expectation of when they slow down is different depending on what your aspirations are.
Correct. Some people want $1 million yachts.
Correct.
Some people want an $80 million one.
That's right. And
They both float on water.
Yeah. So I love the word that you said earlier on, humble. I love humble people, and I love trying to remain humble. And I'm certainly not saying, that I'm at any means, there's many people that are significantly wealthier, but I'm content with what I've got. But being a human being and being genuine and share your knowledge and help others, to me, that's most important now. So my business
I think you reached a point in your life that, when you sold your first business, financially you're okay. You don't need to work anymore. As we get older, we get to enjoy different things in life. What I'm finding very joyful, what I enjoy these days, when I do something good for others.
Absolutely.
Because with me, if I get another couple of Lambos or Ferraris, there's nothing special. But putting a smile on somebody else's face or helping somebody who's struggling, it's on a personal level, it's more fulfilling.
Spot on.
But when you're hungry and motivated, that spark doesn't go away.
No, it doesn't, and it never will. I don't think you ever kill it fully, but you realign. So I'm sort of at that I kind of got to that crossroad when I sold my business. It's a case of, what do I do? It's getting to the finish line.
Tell me the feeling you settling your business. So, because what a lot of business owners know, when you're running your business, the hardest thing is when you're growing your business constantly. Mm-hmm. That means most of the capital that you make, you don't take 100% of the profits. Always reinvest, grow. But when the payday happens, payday is a payday. Mm-hmm. When you sold your business, did you feel empty for a minute?
The first emotion was...
bank account is healthy.
Yes. But the first moment was I felt reborn. I felt like I can reset the clock to the idea of not having to answer an email, not having to make that phone call to that customer, not dealing with
anybody,
HR, anything or anyone. For a moment, it was like, wow.
Reason why I said that, because we moved into this home about a month ago. And when we moved into this home, both grateful. From house commission to over $20 million house now on the Gulf Coast, 4 kilometers from the city, everything we can dream of in this home. And there was a moment where I was standing in one of the hallways upstairs, and Giselle was on the other side of the hallway, maybe, 10 meters away from me. And for a second, I stopped and I thought to myself, how would I feel if I just sold every business? And we have exited out of 2 successfully, but I still got 400 staff out of shit that I do today. How would I feel if I sold everything today? And then everything went so fast in my brain to the point where I was like, okay, all the businesses are sold and I'm just in this hallway with no purpose. Mm. How would I feel? Mm. Was an interesting moment for me. Mm. Very interesting.
I don't think had you made that decision and exercised it, I don't think you will.
I did twice, and I'm always back.
Correct. You will always be back. And essentially, the moment I sold my company, the idea of the reset was essentially what I'm referring to is a fresh piece of canvas.
Yes.
In the first week, I bought a shopping centre. And that was incredibly, well, if you ask me, one of the greatest milestones in my life. Remember I said I was doing the pizza delivery job?
Yes.
I did it in the shopping centre. And I bought this little shopping centre, and when I bought it, the agent that was managing it said, I'll introduce you to the tenants. And I went into the pizza shop that I worked in, and it's the same owner. And I walked in, his name was Peter, and he's like,
was it good to you when you were young?
Very good.
Okay. Otherwise, get the fuck out of my shop.
No, very good. He's like, Sam, how are you? How are you going? How's family? What's going on? And the agent just sat there looking at us both. And after a moment, after we've said our hellos, he then looked puzzled. He looked at the agent, then he looked at me and he's like, okay, well, what's going on right now? And the agent just simply said, Peter, meet the landlord. That was a pretty exciting thing. And he was like, you bought the centre? He goes, you were pizza delivering for me at $10 an hour. And I work for you essentially. You own the centre. That's incredible. So that was a pretty exciting thing. But I don't think you ever stop.
No. Look, I don't think you should stop.
No.
Because it's dangerous.
Very dangerous.
To stop. I think it's very healthy for our brains to be active.
Correct.
One thing that my uncle that I look up to a lot would say, when you're born, as a baby, you start crawling first, then, start walking a little bit, and then you might start running a little bit. And as an adult, you're progressing, right, from age, 0 towards, it keep going up. Mm-hmm. When you want to retire completely, you need to kind of take the same steps back, not just cut it. I'm age 50, 60, 70, 45, whatever. I'm retired and I'm doing nothing.
Yes.
So you need to progressively, because, like we have retired my father 2-3 years ago. He's still on all of my development sites every day. Mm-hmm. And mom used to complain and I used to complain. I was like, Dad, you never have to work again. And it doesn't work, but he comes to our development sites every day. I don't even know what the hell he does anymore. Mm-hmm. And I used to complain. I said, Mom, what the hell? But now I'm glad he does.
Yeah.
Because he goes on our development sites, he talks to plumber, electrician, bricklayers, and he might do a little bit of work here, a little bit there. Keeps his time occupied, his brain, and he's communicating with people. So I think it's healthy. And I love the fact that, Warren Buffett, age 94, still working. Harry Chebugalov, I'm not sure if you watched his interview a couple of weeks ago, age 91 or 92, still working. I think people get mistaken by concept of working. Mm-hmm. To me, working means being active.
Yes. And
doing, at this stage of my life, what I enjoy, what I like doing. And being active to some people could be, playing golf every day. There's no difference between somebody playing golf every day and me doing what I enjoy doing. I'm playing golf in my own field.
Yes.
So I think just that being active is healthy for all of us individuals. However, I am at the stage now, and I'm assuming yourself as well, where the risk is different. Mm-hmm. When you're in your 20s, early 30s, you kind of have this zero fear mindset. Now anything I'm doing, I'm kind of more calculated. How much risk am I taking for the reward? And so, if you ask me age 30 or age 25, 100% investing in one thing, all good, no problem. Right now, if somebody says to Sam and Emil, hey guys, we want you to start investing money in this water, we can say, you know what? We both are happy to put 1% of our net worth or wealth of money that we have in it, but we're not going to say, fuck it, Sam, let's sell everything we're putting into this water. Yeah. So appetite for the risk becomes different. Great. I want to know from really IT to where you are today, shopping center investor. And you correct me if I'm wrong. I'm gonna tell you what I know. You do own retirement village,
correct,
and you're also involved in property development.
Correct.
Completely different field than really where you started in your first business to where you are now. How did that transition happen naturally towards property industry?
Yeah. So during my IT career, the IT industry at that time and continues to be a very lucrative industry. So the incomes were quite high. So I was always quite frugal with money and reinvesting it. So I was in the property game at the age of 20 when I bought my first home. And from then I continued to buy initially standard residential properties, then went into commercial, those sorts of things. So I've always been in the property game so far as an investor is concerned.
Yes.
When I sold my company, And I do love property. I love the idea of property and building, a portfolio. And I had that fresh piece of canvas. I knew it had to do something with property.
Yes.
But it was, as you say, it was very selective about what I got involved in and what I didn't. But I was also at a different time in my life where I wanted to do something a little bit more meaningful. I wanted to give back, whether by helping others, even youths, getting involved in youth programs and those sorts of things. And the industry that I was interested in getting into was retirement living, because you're addressing the from two spectrums. One, it's a very lucrative industry. It's a very
know
profitable
a
business.
lot about it.
Great. So
Yes.
it is...
Friend of mine, I'm not sure if you heard of Gem Life.
Gemlife, yes, of course.
Yes.
Yeah. They're very big here in Queensland.
They're massive.
Yeah.
And which is interesting story about them. The gentleman who started Gem Life, his name is Peter Puljic. Very good friend of mine. He's 70. He'd be 76, 7 years old now. And about 7, 8 years ago, his son got into it, Adrian. What his dad did over 35 years, his son has built it 5 times bigger in the last 7, 8 years.
Amazing. Wow. Inspirational. Yep.
Yes and no. His dad did it old school way. Don't borrow anything. Do what you can. Add as much as you can. And son obviously, thinks differently than his father did. Access to capital, foreign capital, and so on, and sell part of the company and so on is different. Which I also love seeing how generations can develop and do things better. Because as a father, you want your son to do way better than you. Well, I'm assuming,
Absolutely.
you know what I mean?
That's the dream. That's the dream.
That is the dream, right? That means, you're doing your job as a father. So through that, I've learned a lot about the industry as well and how rewarding it is.
It's extremely rewarding. So from a business perspective, financially, it's extremely rewarding, and it's going to have exponential growth without a shadow of a doubt.
We are aging.
We're an aging population. We've got the baby boomers coming out, and I don't think everyone, even the players. So firstly, you need to have relatively deep pockets, large parcels of land to be able to do it effectively.
Yes.
But I'm not convinced that anyone is really doing it very well.
Yes.
So I cut my teeth on my first village. So just going back, the two key things was, yes, it has to be lucrative. It has to be a business. And in an industry, I can use my strategic vision as an entrepreneur, but also it's about giving back. And giving back, I mean, the way I see it is these retirees, when they look at retirement living, we call it their forever home.
Yes.
It's their last home, essentially, before they go to higher care, which it leads them to.
So is yours one what they would call over 50s?
Correct. Over 55s.
Over 55.
That's right. So my single goal is to ensure that these retirees, when they look at our village or if they live in my village, is to be extremely happy.
Yes.
And that's my focus.
There's a key. There's a key for them staying there and them suggesting it to other people to come.
The later one being the most strong one. And all I care about is executing the actual intent. And the intent is if you make them happy, they will tell 20 of their friends. Yes. And the phone will ring and say, I want to live in your village because my friend won't stop talking.
I think people get mistaken when it comes to the real value of referrals. Old school. A lot of people think, just spend money on social media ads and whatever, and that is all fine. In a business where you got to spend money on digital marketing, all that as well. But when it comes to majority of businesses, specifically property development wise and retirement villages, you cannot beat me being in your village and me telling my friends, you know what, you got to sell your house and come here.
Yeah, correct. Because they will share their happiness and people want that. The retirees want that.
This retirement village you're now,
yes.
Did you build it or bought it?
Bought it.
Right.
And that was the stick of gauge of how I'm going. And mind you, it's a brand new industry for me. I'm learning. And the people who owned the village prior to me was the initial founders and developers. The father is now mid-90s.
Yes.
He handed over to his son. His son is now mid-60s and went into retirement. And they needed to sell this business because his children didn't want to go in that space. And it was a 2-year journey for them to find they wanted to maintain this particular village to stay as a family-run boutique village.
Yes.
For their consideration for the residents.
Yes.
Well, that was somewhat what I was told. When I agreed to buy this business and keep it within the family, and that's still the intent, the journey of what I've done with it in the last 3 years is quite incredible. The growth that we've had is amazing. And the growth in retirement living is demand for people wanting to live in your village.
Yes.
And how quickly you move your inventory.
Yes.
When I took it over historically from the staff that remained on, they were saying we always had quite a high vacancy rate. And there was always this fear, and I know now the previous owners knew, that it was imminent before there was a huge exodus from this village because we had an extremely aged population.
Yes.
So we had a number of residents in the extremely high 90s and even to the 100. So it was just about to topple where I'm going to get this mass exodus, and we already had a huge vacancy rate.
Yes.
So it was challenging to fill that vacancy and then deal with what was about to come. Because if you have half your village empty and people come and say, I have all these options, well, why? What's wrong with your village? Why do you have such a huge vacancy rate?
And let me ask you, how many homes are in this village?
60.
60 homes.
Correct.
And please correct me for asking this question. So the way I'm assuming your retirement village works, if I am 55, I can buy the property from you, but I never own the land.
There's 3 different ways. There's a land lease, there's a loan lease, and then there's a strata. So strata is your typical buy-sell, normal residential property, fixated with a contract that goes back to the village owners
Yes.
who provide you the service during your time in the village.
Yes.
The one that you're probably referring to, there's a loan lease, which essentially I own the real estate for all intensive technical purposes, but
Yes.
you buy the property or the rights under a license to live and occupy that property.
Yes.
Your rights are protected just as a strata title is.
Yes. So the one that you have, which one is that?
I have a combination of strata and in the process of transferring to loan lease.
Okay, so I own the property, but I don't own the land, basically.
No, it's the residents that when I took it over, all residents own their own property as a
Right.
strata.
Okay.
When I took over, I started transferring them to loan lease. So
Okay.
essentially buying the property from the current resident and then bringing in a new resident under a loan lease model.
Okay.
And there's some synergies and benefits as to why I have the entire village
Yes,
under a
yes.
loan lease. And the main one is at some point, most likely in Jermaine's generation, there'll be a significant redevelopment that will need to occur.
Yes.
Because this is in quite a expensive area. And back then, 30 years ago, this village has been running for some time. The units are quite large, so they take quite a bit of
And
risk.
and in the retirement village, if I buy it for, let's say, $500,000,
Yeah.
and I want to sell it in 8 years,
Yeah.
I can only sell it back through you guys.
Yeah. No, they have the option in our village anyway.
Yes.
So some of the larger entities have some pretty tough contracts.
Yes.
And there was a write-up out recently at the ABC about gave a lot of bad publicity to some of the retirement village space. But in our village, no. We give the option for residents to use an external agent if they choose.
Yes.
But 99% of cases,
Yes.
they use us because
And how do you determine the value?
market rate and demand.
Yes,
so
of
not
course.
too
Just
dissimilar,
like any other
like any
property.
other property,
Yeah.
correct. But because the demand is now higher, I'm able to increase the value, which the exiting residents are extremely static.
Yes.
Because previously they used to be sold at a lower rate.
Yes.
Because the demand is now there.
So is the retirement village that you own now, is there more space to grow it? Is there more land?
Not on the existing, but it will be a demo and redevelop. So it's
Okay.
60.
So that's
which
a brand new.
plan to
That's a
become
brand
160.
right. So that's a brand new industry for you, retirement villages, and you own one now.
One there, plus I'm developing, completing 50% of another village, or not quite 50%. So there's an existing village that's got 60, a DA for 60. I'm developing a further 18. The previous developer went into receivership. I'm currently in the process of doing civils and developing that, and got a DA for an additional 4. So I'm building a 22 in an existing development.
Victoria.
Victoria as well.
Right. So when are we going to see in Queensland?
That's a great question. Well, now. So the first step was to get Jermaine into Queensland, which he's now transitioned.
And we're not letting him go. So just so you know.
Well, you hold on to it. And I'm in the process of exiting a number of developments and projects in Melbourne.
And you're
With
also
intent to
involved
move
in developments as well.
Correct.
Yes.
So there's that development, and land banking is the other.
Yes.
Land banking and private lending. So
Yes.
the private lending space, many people do it. I do it with my own funding, but I'm quite strategic about how I do it.
Do you, when it comes to private lending, do you only lend it on completed project, or you actually do construction finance as well, part of the development?
Do construction finance as well, but I'm not your typical private lender. There's always key parameters for someone to evaluate whether they'll do private lend. What do you want? What's the GRV? What's the as-is value? I think outside the 9 dots. I ask a lot more questions to understand the full scope of the full picture. And the way I do that is typically I'd like to talk instead of the brokers. So the brokers will bring me a deal and I'll say, I want to talk to this borrower if the information I've got at hand is of interest.
Yes.
And in nearly every case, I uncover more business
Yes.
and I uncover a way in which to de-risk it further than your typical run-of-the-mill
Yes.
brokers.
Do
Because
you-
the brokers
do you-
don't ask the right questions.
100%. And most brokers don't understand property development for a start.
Correct.
So when it comes to private lending, do you also take developers as a partners that you're actually part of the project, or you just strictly, I lend money, you there, I'm here?
Yeah. At the moment, all the ones that I've done has been I'm here, I'm there, but every discussion is always with the possibility of doing that.
Yes.
For various reasons, each time a deal comes, I haven't entered into that development.
Yes.
And I've stayed at arm's length, but there's always, and in fact, nearly in all cases, because I'm talking to the borrower, they're asking me, Sam, can you please join us because we like the way you think. You can help us expand and exercise and get out of this project quicker, faster, and do more. I want to work with you.
But you also develop your own properties, right?
Yes.
So I think that's advantage being financier as well, because you understand the process.
Yeah.
Compared to a lot of correct.
Yeah.
So listening to you, Sam, it's been an interesting conversation, and I'm trying to summarize it in my head. Young, 3 years old Egyptian kid came to Australia with his family, mom and his brother, followed by dad later. Lost mom at age 13. Troubled childhood, got sent back to Egypt at age 15. Somehow you crawl your back to Australia alone 8 months later. Started hustling, working, met an amazing lady. Mom to your beautiful son. Lost a brother at age 20, or he was 23. Started hustling, working, age 30. Started your own business, exited 8-9 years later. Today, successfully running retirement village. You got your own private lending finance company that you lend your own capital, property development. 48.
Good summary.
Looking back on life, I can't say, you know what, you had an amazing, beautiful journey. I can say you had a journey full of love, pain, happiness. From the point of view, you got a son who is touch wood, going the right path. Sadness, and it's just so much in 48 years that which is fascinating. How much can one human take? How much can we take? So looking back from your life, what would you say? Me trying to summarize it in 30 seconds. What would you say is a key to happy life? Knowing what you know now and by being through what you have been through.
Making sure that all your buckets in life are full. Family, health, business, and maintaining the status of all of those buckets simultaneously and not going top heavy on any singular, because it will cause long-term challenges and pain points. So I think the key to success, the ongoing long-term happy life, is to ensure that all your buckets are full in all areas. I experienced the hardship, which was trauma and extremely hard work because of the consequence of that trauma. But I was extremely unhealthy, extremely unhappy, and essentially, in my opinion, didn't have a functional, proper, happy familyhood because Jermaine didn't know who Dad was. So the key to my success was getting that work, life, family, health balance right that allowed me to continue that success and allow me the opportunity to focus on business without any other distractions. So I think that that's a pivotal point of maintaining long-term success. That's in my opinion.
I agree. I got a few questions for you. Somebody who is 15, 16, 17, 18 that is going through hard times like you did, what would you tell them today? What would you tell Sam who was lost at age 15, 16? Looking back, what would you tell him?
Don't blame the world for the circumstance that you're in. Depend on yourself. Take responsibility for yourself, because no one else is going to care when you're a young man and you're blaming the world, whether by doing the wrong thing, getting into crime or drugs, because this is the typical scenario of someone who blames the world because my parents did this or this happened. So I would say to that young person, take responsibility. It's hard. You've got a tough serve in life. You've got the wrong hand. Toughen up, deal with it. It's going to be hard, but take responsibility and just deal with those and try and leverage off the available resources around you to help you through life, whether by family members that do care or whether it's psychiatrists or people that you can refer to try and make life harder. But don't blame. Don't put the blame, because everyone wants to, there's always an excess. Everyone wants to blame. The reason for my failure, the reason I did this is because my parents did this. And it doesn't serve any purpose. And at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to suffer. So,
well said. Well said. I always say there's two ways of looking at it. You can almost use anything as a fuel to do better things tomorrow. If you had bad parents, well, you know what? If I have kids tomorrow, what have I learned? How I can be better one. So there's always some lesson in everything, and I always say, of course it's easier when you had your nice childhood, but would you be as hungry and as motivated as you are today if you had a smooth ride? Who knows? It's hard to predict. Anybody wants to start their own business tomorrow, would you say business is for everyone?
No. Some people, I don't think people can learn. It depends on their motivation and their drivers. You can always learn things, but I don't think everyone is made to be a business owner.
I agree.
No.
You gotta have a stomach for it.
You've got to have a stomach for it. You've got to be able to go the long haul. You've got to be able to take those risks. You've got to have a certain drive and passion. You've got to know, this is the key thing. I find so many business owners that just, read an article, open up a business, no due diligence, no acumen, and risk everything, put their money, their house and everything on the line. And then, you can come along and ask some key questions, and you can tell by the responses that they really have done no homework. They don't know what they're doing, and they're just praying that the planets are going to align. That's a very
Would you say some people, I've seen it so many times, people could be running one business for 20 years. For 20 years, they've been running it. And 20 years, that business is barely making any money. Mm-hmm. But you know what? The way they're thinking, I've been in it for 20 years. I can't just let go. Mm-hmm. So some people find it hard to distance themselves from the business that maybe has no hope to go. Mm-hmm. And the next thing is, 20, 30, 40 years have passed.
Mm. Yep.
That
would be disappointing and sad for them. And what's also interesting is that you can find businesses that people have got a business that 20 years on the grind and not making any money, and someone else can come in, take over that business and change it overall.
Correct.
In our industry, in the retirement living space, the one that you were referring to about they buy the property and they lease the land.
Yes.
It's called a land lease.
Yes.
One of the biggest players in that space is lifestyle communities.
Yes.
3 months ago, they had a 2 billion market cap. It's now halved, and I think they've recovered a bit since because of this ABC report, because it was directed at them. I had the fortune of meeting not a young man, but a man who was talking about another development site that I had, and he said, my background, and historically I used to own retirement villages. And I was with some business associates, and they looked and they said, Sam's into retirement villages. I said, we'll come back to that. So we talked about the business. And I said, let's talk about this retirement village space. What happened? He said, I had 6 villages. I said, great. That sounds pretty good. He goes, yeah, but we've sold them all now. That's right. And he said, there's a different model, and it's about, land lease. And I said, lifestyle communities. He goes, oh, lifestyles. I'm like, yes. And he said, essentially, the founders of lifestyle communities came in and had a look at his model. And they were the first creators of it and got to 6 villages. And someone looked at the model and said, this is entrepreneurial, and did it better. It's as simple as they just took it and said, I can do this better.
I mean, look at it. Tesla. Tesla is not the first car invented in this world.
That's right.
And what people actually don't realize, Tesla is not even the first electric car.
No.
I mean, what was the name of that car? Toyota Prius? Is it Prius or
Prius? Yeah.
Prius, whatever. I mean, that's been half electric for like 25 bloody years.
Yeah.
Most of the things that all of us want to do already exist, but so many people are not doing it right. But saying that, I do feel that we are living in the most amazing times and most dangerous times, because a lot of businesses are exposed to too much change happening so fast, and them not adapting to the change around them, and before they know it, they're behind.
Correct. And look, it's a fast-paced, ever-changing industry, more than, world, much more than we ever experienced. The technological world that we live in now with AI and all the applications you can apply with AI into businesses, it's a mad race. It's a real mad race. And the ones that are able to keep up with the times and, are going to succeed. And you've got this new age of YouTubers that want to make money and get rich by being an influencer or all these sorts of things. And then with this new AI world, it's just endless what you can do with it.
And to be honest, for people, if they don't adapt to it, I was thinking the other day, when it comes to AI, it can so much replace so much productivity in your business, full stop. Instead of having 10 admin people, you might have 3. which means you can be more competitive in the market tomorrow, and so on. And people that want to do everything manually, they be out of the business because they simply can't compete. And so the race over the next 10 years is going to be really fascinating to see where the hell all this is going to go.
I agree.
And I can say this, I am glad that I'm part of this age.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be phenomenal. Sam, it's been a pleasure. I'm very grateful for your beautiful son to introduce us together. And this interview came out of nowhere. We had a discussion. I said to him, I would love to have you. I actually said to him a couple of weeks ago, I would love to have your dad here. And here we are. And I'm very grateful that I met you now. Your story, to me, it's amazing because it has amazing way that story has progressed in life. And it's been a pleasure.
I appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thanks very much.